Hello. Let me do a Sunday Reads for this August the 1st. August the 1st in Canada has been declared, in March it was declared as Emancipation Day, which is Canada joining very late in the day of recognizing that in August of 1834, the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 came into effect across the British Empire, abolishing slavery. Canada had practiced slavery all the way back from like the 1600s, where Black and Indigenous peoples were slaves in Canada. Um, with the Emancipation Act, it only freed children under 6, and people older than that, had to still serve 4 to 6 years as apprentices. Um, there was a $20 million in compensation for the slave owners. There was no compensation for the enslaved themselves. So it was a very imperfect thing, and obviously not the end of things any more than Juneteenth in the United States signaled just the end of wine and roses. It's been brought in. It's been brought in as an officially recognized day in Canada. Just generally, there's actually parts of Canada where Emancipation Day has actually been celebrated for a long while, but it's been finally federally recognized as hopefully as a way of Canadians, to encourage Canadians to reflect and actually kind of educate themselves around this day, of realizing that Canada too was deeply involved in the transatlantic slave trade. While the number of slaves that we had in Canada was less, though still very significant. We also we were also participated in the transatlantic slave trade. We definitely a lot of like all the goods, the slave produced goods from the Caribbean were traded up to Canada. Canada deeply enmeshed. Canada, and before it was Canada, was deeply enmeshed in that economic system, that economic driver that exploited slavery, and of course, that Indigenous people in Canada were also not recognized as persons with legal rights and were used as slaves. There's documentation that like about 50%, 57% of Indigenous slaves in Canada were Indigenous women, were young Indigenous women, as young as 14 or 13, young. So it's one of those things. It's like it's a good opportunity to not try and bury our history, not indulge in the worst Canadian habit, which is going, oh, we were so much better than the United States. It's like, no, we were not. There's accounts here of like, in the 18th century, when slaves fled Canada for the United States to places like Vermont and New York to get free, because those states had actually banned slavery. We do actually have the thing in Canada that in 1793, that Lieutenant Governor Simcoe, reacting to some really abominable cases of abuse of enslaved people, especially a woman, Cooley, her name was Cooley, I can't remember her first name, that they actually passed a act to limit slavery in Upper Canada, which made the importation of slaves illegal, and that current slaves would be freed at 25, which apparently greatly decreased the number of slaves in Canada then leading up to in 1834. But even past that, just because slavery gets abolished, there's lots of accounts of Black people fleeing to Canada, going, oh, this is finally going to be free, and encountering horrible racism here, and end up moving on to somewhere else just because it was illegal didn't, slavery was legal didn't mean that racism wasn't alive and well in Canada. So it's just one of these things of, it's not to beat ourselves up and thrash ourselves for being, evil Canadians. Sometimes maybe thrash ourselves for being such fucking smug Canadians, but to just, learn about our history and realize exactly how much all this stuff is things to keep in mind now as how we conduct ourselves, and what that we do, that Canada is a place that does have the same but different history with stuff like racism, slavery, all this stuff. That it's something that's worthy to be worthy to be remembered. And it's a small thing, but I think it's a worthy thing to note for to this day. I guess coming closer to home, I'd like to mark a little anniversary that Brian at Bookish had. He celebrated his 100th episode of his Saturday Hodgepodge videos, which are a real institution on kind of this corner of BookTube. I'm sure the overlap between anyone who watches my videos and Brian's is 100%, so we can all just agree that Brian's weekly check-ins, where he'll talk about stuff that's kind of gotten under his skin, that he wants to talk about, issues, or just what he's reading, or his music picks, or all that stuff. It's a lovely thing to have to look forward to each Saturday. And thank you, Brian. I thanked you already, but I did it in my usual clunky way. But yeah, it's like really, that's something to really look forward to each Saturday, especially when it gets political and gets passionate. I do enjoy that. And I'm sure most of the other people who watch him, they either hate watch him, but I think majority just love watch, because he's such a calm, clear, reasoned presence on BookTube. Someone who's able to actually string together good, solid arguments and marshal his facts in a way that I can only aspire to. So yeah, thank you, Brian. The other thing I want to note, because if you're going to mention Brian, you have to mention Steve Donahue, because they are bros together, and it is Steve's non-reaction to the Booker Prize, and it's not so much the issue itself. I think I'm well known Steve's views on book prizes in general. He feels like they are not considering strictly literary merits when it comes to books. That indeed that books get on. He feels like books get on these prizes. It's because they're checking off checklists, but they're not checking off what he considers the most important most important thing, which is literary merit. And you can go back and forth on that. I mean, I think book prizes for the most part say more about the people giving out book prizes than they do the books themselves. This is what we feel like is great literature, and that changes throughout the years. And there's been a shift. And whether you agree with that shift or not, I guess is going to be see how much you feel about book prizes. For the most part, I've never particularly taken book prizes as a great thing. You have to kind of go with, it's like I don't know, any anonymous body, that's not exactly how I'm going to get. If I know what Steve thinks about a book, then I'm going to have an inkling of, okay, well, I've got an idea of Steve's tastes, and I can use that to make my own decision about whether I'm going to get a book or not. Now, the reason I want to bring up Steve is because I just love how Steve organizes or doesn't organize his videos, because he said it started with what is it? The Interrail Eurorail book tag. You had to watch that video to find out that he was not going to discuss the Booker Prize, and here were his views on the Booker Prize. And then you the next day you had to listen to the Nobel Prize in Literature tag to kind of get a little further amplification on that, and hear that he had gotten emails from people saying, well, maybe you'll talk about the books. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And then because you'll be scanning for that topic to come up, you would have had to gone to a July 2021 Mega Stuff video, which was, assuredly stuffed with lots of content, lots and lots of content, where at the very end of that video, he did actually give his some brief opinions on on the books, some of the books in the Booker Prize, because if you give Steve, if it's a prize where they've there's like 1,000 books, Steve's probably read 900 of them, and now the Booker Prize, the Booker judges would have got access to books that haven't been released yet, and being kind of based across the pond in England, they probably have access to books that Steve didn't. But I think he still I think he had like about 5 or 6 books that he had read already, because Steve is a book critic who reads everything, who reads it very quickly and very deeply, and he finally gave his views on those books, and you could go to that video to hear him talk. Spoiler alert, it's not really that positive on any of the books, but I just it's a hilarious. If you watch Steve, you have to be all in. You basically, as he expects, you just watch all his videos. He does 2 or 3 videos a day. You watch all those videos, which is not a hard thing to do. But I just laughed because that is the only way that you could track his non-reaction. I'm not going to react to the Booker Prize over his not reacting to the Booker Prize over 3 days, over three separate videos. There's probably other videos that I didn't watch. Sorry, Steve. That also maybe had notes on the Booker Prize in there, but I just thought that is Steve. Even maybe if I don't agree with him on all stuff, I love how he teased his audience. He teased the audience each day about how he wasn't going to talk about the Booker Prize, and talked about the Booker Prize. He just couldn't help himself. So that's some of the fun of BookTube. So yeah, let's go on to actually what I read this week. I continued on with Flappers and Philosophers by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I don't think I talked about it last time, because I've gone through Bernice Bobs Her Hair, Benediction, and Dalrymple Goes Wrong. Oh, that Dalrymple, he really went wrong. Which it's interesting reading early Fitzgerald stories, because having then gone on and read The Great Gatsby, read a couple of his other novels, you can really see those kind of the themes in there. I mean, Bernice Bobs Her Hair is almost like, it's kind of like influencer culture. It's like, how to be popular, how to be a successful young woman, in a way that really kind of resonates with the day. I mean, you could call it a vapid story, but it's all about presentation and kind of that kind of mean girl infighting, which is like, oh my God, this in some ways wouldn't take too much to kind of update it today, in maybe a depressing kind of way, because he's probably, Fitzgerald isn't cheering this stuff on. Benediction, which I think some book critics thought like, oh, this is the big story of this collection, perhaps because it's got a girl who's a young woman who's visiting her monk older brother who he doesn't really know her at all, and there's this sort of this thing of kind of spirituality in a world that has no use for it, and how that has kind of like a physical effect on her, and also just sort of Fitzgerald's thing of using especially young women as sort of some kind of a symbol, something to clutch onto as a symbol in a way that's just like seems as kind of as silly, as vapid as the other stuff there. So that story actually didn't do too much for me. And then Dalrymple Goes Wrong, all about a soldier who come back from war who it's interesting, because I think of post World War II, you get into noir fiction, you get into crime fiction, where you get all these kind of ex-soldiers running around and them maybe having lost kind of there's no moral compass there anymore, and all they know is violence. And Dalrymple Goes Wrong is sort of an example of that happening after the First World War, and just definitely the idea of like, there's no right and wrong, there's just getting what I want, materialism, which you can also see in something like The Great Gatsby with Gatsby himself, of like, just getting all the stuff, and how I mean, obviously kind of a very moralistic tone of like, and that being empty and hollow. So yeah, that's my Fitzgerald hits for last week and this week. I actually finished the two books that I think I talked about starting last week. The first one being The Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Roffey, 2020 novel of told in kind of both retrospect and in the kind of a present tense of David, a young black fisher on Saint Constance, the island Saint Constance, in Caribbean. Out fishing, strumming his guitar, smoking a bit of ganja, and a mermaid coming up, and him singing his holy songs to her, and them falling in love, and she turning out to be a cursed young woman from like 1,000 years earlier, who was cursed by the women in her village for her kind of her sexuality, her effect on the men around, and doomed to kind of an immortal life as half woman, half fish, more kind of animal in the thing. And just that it's a wonderful mix of kind of love and sensuality, with also like the history of like, Akayas, the mermaids people have all been slaughtered. The Spanish conquistadors came, and her plate people were exterminated. And also living on an island where Miss Rain is the last of the white plantation people who live there. Her family bought the plantation post slavery, but there's still very much the thing of she owns all the land, even though she's trying to do right. There are characters who are really angry, still really angry with her. Like, they hate the white people, and when one of them delivers kind of a diatribe against her, she's that woman Priscilla is both the villain, but you also are going, she's not wrong. It's not wrong, and there's a kind of a hurt there, which extends to Acadia's relationship with a black man who grew up with her. They were children and kind of fell in love as children, but as they grew up into the that history, that complication, and this is probably one I'm going to actually do a review on. Really well written. Kind of bounces between a very kind of close third person to David's journal, to kind of almost kind of a prose poem bits from Akaya herself, which all really mix wonderfully in that kind of the language used, because even Miss Rain Akaya uses this kind of the dialect of the islands is what she talks in, even though she's also teaching Akaya to both talk in the kind of the dialect of the island, but also to read in proper English. So there's all that kind of mixed in there as well. So that was really good. The other thing I finished listening to was the library book by Susan Orlean's 2018 nonfiction work, which centers around a 1986 fire that was perhaps set in the Los Angeles Public Library, which devastated the library. The library was closed for like 6 years before it was finally all kind of put back together. Burned like something like 400,000 books, damaged a whole ton more. And it centered around that, and around sort of one of the main suspect, this failed kind of actor, delivery boy, a young man, Harvey Peak. But if I can see from the Orchid Thief, Susan Orlean likes to take something like a central event like that, but then she's much more interested in she's interested in not just like she's not just interested in the orchid thief guy in the orchid thief. She's interested in all the history around. And in the library book, it's not called the fire or anything. The fire at the Los Angeles Public Library. It's called the library book because it's much more about various threads about the fire, but about the history of the Los Angeles Public Library and about the present day running of the library. Just fascinated by just how much how important the library is in the civic running of this place, and also just in like kind of the history of it. There's the one of the history things is the Great Library War, where the library in like 1906 or something like that was being run by a woman who thought everything was going great, went to the board meeting. It was like, oh yeah, everything's going great, wonderful, wonderful. And at the very end of it, a guy stands up and says, we want your resignation. It's like, why do you want my resignation? Everything's going great. Oh, because we found a man to run the library, and that's much more suitable than that. And this sparked off a great legal battle, great protests to resist this. It's 1906, so maybe you can see how things go. And indeed, the next guy, Loomis, who is this man, is the one who comes in, and it is a great eccentric in himself. Actually, does contribute a lot, but there's still that kind of burn of like. So it's like it's about the library, but it's about kind of the culture, the history. It's about the library. It's about how important just having all this information here, what kind of books were taken out. Each chapter heading lists some of the books which kind of then come up thematically within the chapters. I think some people get turned off by the fact that this isn't just strictly a true crime investigation. It's like that's the flavoring. That's what Susan Orlean uses as a little skeleton to then weave everything else around. So you have to have a great curiosity and enthusiasm for the library, for this library and just libraries in general, which I definitely do. So I found this an incredibly compelling listen, because I listened to it. And Susan Orlean, I like it when authors read their books because they're not actorly, they don't emote. I like just straightforward reading. And I listened to this over like 2 days. It's like 6 hours one day, six hours the next day. It was like just really great fun. And because I got through that so quickly, I ended up listening to a Terry Pratchett book, The We Free Men. The channel Lost in Adaptation, the fellow on there whose name I can't remember, he just did a appreciation of the Discworld series. Terry Pratchett, a British fantasist novel. He passed away not too long ago, and he created this series called Discworld, which spans I think it's over 40 books now, 40 books in the series, all centered around this flat Earth world, which started out as kind of a satire of kind of like fantasy tropes, but then became much more. You have newspaper novels. You have crime ones with the guards, with Sergeant Vimes of the Guards series. So many different ones. And now he was an Lost in Adaptation fellow. He did a great summation of it, and he talked about the We Free Men, but he didn't talk about what I think is my favorite character in Terry Pratchett, which is Tiffany Aching, who is this I believe in the first novel a 9-year-old girl who has to kind of take over from her grandmother, Nanny Aching, who has been kind of the protecting force in this area called the Chalk, because it used to be under the ocean, was thousands and thousands of tiny little shelled mollusk creatures that got geological time turned into the chalk of these lands. And it's this first adventure is all about the Queen of Fairies stealing her brother and her having to go and rescue him. And it's a very straightforward that way. I think Pratchett kind of It's called A Story of Discworld versus a Discworld novel because it's aimed more at a younger readership. To be honest, the writing is still as sharp and as dry and as witty as always. It's probably just the fact that it's centering on a young protagonist, and that it is just a single straight storyline. There isn't multiple storylines that you're weaving together, which actually gives it a nice kind of a sharp driving through line. I do like my novellas that just kind of like don't fluff around. We just kind of go right straight through on the plot. It does have the great comic creation of the Wee Free Men, the Mackinac Feagles, who are red-haired, 6-inch creatures covered in blue tattoos, wearing tartans, and yeah, Crivens, shouting in Scottish dialect, loving of stealing, fighting, and drinking, and then more fighting, and then more fighting, and more fighting. Who are her helper, and who she has to sort of take control of. Tiffany is a kind of one of these great Pratchett heroes, protagonists, that she's her great superpower is that she can stand back and look at things, and then stand back at herself looking at things. It's like this second sight idea, and that is probably the great power of all the witches in the Pratchett world. Isn't that they can go bazap or something, or they can fly, they can fly on the broomstick, but more that they actually use their head and think about stuff critically. It's the power of critical thinking in a novel, and yeah, it's also got kind of a sadness of her dealing with the death of her grandmother. It's the thing of going, maybe I'm not a nice person. When Wentworth, her perpetually sticky, perpetually kind of going, want a sweetie, want to go bath, want a sweetie. It's like he's like, I'm not sad he's gone. He's a burden. He's annoying. It's like she's not your sweet little girl. Oh, my poor brother. It's like, God, he's so annoying. Maybe it'd be better if he was gone. It's like there's a kind of she has a sharpness to her, and she also does feel sorry about thinking that, but she also can stand out of herself enough to go, yeah, you do think that, which makes her a great character. And it's just the Wee Free Men, as read by us, Stephen Riggs, is just was a fun little delight to read. I probably don't have much more to say about that. God. And then let me unlock my phone because I've just been going on and on about the Wee Free Men for so long. And then I need to pick up some more books. What am I going to read next? One of my booktube spins was the first one was the HMS Surprise, which is number 3 in the Audrey Matron series, all set in like Napoleonic War. And I've just read the first little bit where it opens with a meeting of the Admiralty where they basically decide that Aubrey and a bunch of other young ship captains aren't going to get to share in the booty because basically he's fallen on the wrong side of politics. So I'm sure Aubrey will have to kind of scramble around more. Matron, the doctor, gets brought up very injudiciously by one of the new Lord High Admiral, which was really bad thing to do in an open session because he is kind of their secret agent, gathering intelligence. So you've got kind of the numbnuts up at the very top of the thing, which are aren't recognizing kind of the great talents they have there. So have just started on that, but it's yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. And I looked up droit, so I know what the droit, meaning kind of a legal right or legal, a legal right to something, because they don't have, the Admiralty has all the rights to all the booty, and poor Aubrey and the rest of the captains do not, and are not going to get rewarded for it. Which at this point in uh, going by Patrick O'Brien. At this point in British naval history, that is how these guys kind of really made their cash. That's how you made money, and that the things that were going to motivate men to kind of take risks and flex the might of the British. And if you're not going to make anything by it, well, love of country is only going to get people so far, and that is what the much more intelligent, much more savvy naval intelligence officer who tries to argue for that case, tries to argue but isn't successful, because it's much more about politics than it is about actually getting things done. So that's what I'm going to read. That's what I'm going to read physically this week, and probably a little bit longer, because it's a little bit longer than and a little bit smaller text than it's like over 300 pages long. You'll probably be hearing me midway through this next week. And I'm also going to listen to Zadie Smith's Feel Free, which is a collection of her essays. It was published in 2018. And she says in the foreword, which is about as far as I've gotten in there, that these were written in the before times when Obama was in power, and so she says it's one of these things of like, you'll feel free. She invites her imagined reader. She imagines, says to feel free to kind of take these apart and reassemble them correctly for the situations we are in now. There's a bit of diffidence in some of these essays, which you can't have diffidence now when you've got to basically be on the barricades fighting, and obviously reflecting the Trump years, and I would say probably even post Trump years. So it's going to be interesting to listen to these essays. I've heard her recommended a lot for almost more for her essays than for her lit, even though I can see that below me holding up the camera here I've got her on beauty, so maybe I will balance out some of her essays with actual reading of some of her fiction as well, because I've read some of her fiction. Is it White Teeth? Yes, probably White Teeth, because that's below it. I've read White Teeth. Can't actually remember too much about it, but that was probably at a before BookTube time, when I would read stuff and then it would just drop right back out of my mind again afterwards, because I didn't have to talk about it and think about it here. So yeah, that's basically what I've been doing this week. Because I'm a loyal listener to a Linoleum Knife, a podcast of the film and cinema, that I've been watching Hell's a Popping, a 1941 film adaptation of the Broadway musical starring Ole Oleson and Chick Johnson, with Martha Ray and Shemp Howard. A really kind of bizarre, fourth wall breaking musical. Just the first 10 minutes of this is just chaos, and you're jumping from kind of like in the projection booth into the film, onto onto the studio floor, walking through various sets. Just bizarre musical, which is on YouTube. I'll leave a link down to below if you're looking for a really kind of Looney Tunes, true Looney Tunes, a predecessor. I think it's predecessor, 1941, probably predecessor of Looney Tunes. That would be great. And the song a la Brian, the song that's in my head at the moment, is a Sweatpant Boots, which I also picked up from Linoleum Knife, which is Iceland's ingenious original campaign, where they invited a very select few, I think it's like 3 a day, tourists, to come into a shop in Iceland, bring in their sweatpants in July, and they would get their sweatpants, those lockdown sweatpants you've been wearing all that time, turned into sweatpant boots over take about a day, and they turn them into sweatpant boots. I don't really care about that. It is indeed the song Sweatpant Boots, baby. You just gotta. I'll leave a link to that, or have a little thing here that you could click to. Is it going to be Sweatpant Boots? Is it going to be Hell's a Poppin'? You decide. One is much shorter than the other, or do both. So yeah, that's my week. That's my entirely too long of a chat, weekly chat. If if I had the time to edit it down, I would, but I don't. So it's 35 minutes about that. So yeah, check out Brian, check out Steve. More videos later.